Hello, friends. It is I, the Bawles, here for another little short show. So I've stuck the link up in the channel because, of course, earlier I'd forgotten to do so. So it's been a busy day. I mean, we've had Mod Show, we've had Gangster Ghost Show, and now we've had Gangster Ghost together with Brother Pike on his show. But it's been pretty well dominated by arguments over splitting hairs, in my view. Hello, Big Bad Mama.
Hey, Claude, good to see you.
Yeah, I just thought I'd go on for it. I didn't expect the Ghost and Pike one to go on for so long. I didn't want to cut into their show, but
Well, I mean, Christian's gone, so what's the...
it's going to finish then, I would say, yes.
Well, they'll probably go on for a while, but I mean, the main focus of the show is done.
It's Bruce and Joseph and Tim and
Aiden and AJ and
yeah. So
it's I just wish they talk. I mean, if Christian wants to talk about the Bible, then talk about the Bible.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of how I feel, and then just end the show after he's like done.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're like arguing about nothing. It sounds like.
That's what I tend to think. It's so funny. It's often people, and it's the same in any religious community. I think, in the Islam religion, there are a couple of different branches as well, or probably
Right.
more than two. And of course, they don't always get on well either,
No, they have wars
no.
against each other. They used
Each
to,
other,
right?
yes.
The Sunnis and the Shiites.
Shiites, and then there's other within that, and it's the same in the Christian religion.
Right. I think it's even
Um,
worse in the Christian
yes,
religion.
possibly.
Even in Judaism, I think,
Mm.
has
Oh yeah. Oh
different
well, and they have
splits.
the rabbis that argue, the conservative, the ultra conservative, and then they can spend all day arguing on it's they at least make a bit of a joke about it, I think. But
Right. Right.
they do take the mickey out of each other. So it's been, oh my god, it's been an interesting week.
Yeah. Did you know
Yes,
that information before I emailed you?
no, I had no
Oh, okay.
idea. Yeah, so but I have
Something
noticed.
happened.
And I've noticed that the shows, sometimes when I've got absolutely nothing to do and I'm bored watching ants crawl up a wall, I decide, I might go on the Providence Guy show, and I go on and I check, there's one coming up. And many times it doesn't even happen. You're just left there hanging,
Right.
like a spare
Yesterday it was
whatever.
like that. Yeah. Yesterday, I don't
Yeah.
think there were any
So
shows.
I think there's something that's going on. I think they're gradually running out of people. Mm.
Well, I mean, it sounds like 4 or 5 people left, and even
Yes.
Joseph was contemplating leaving.
Yeah. Yes, I can't
Um,
quite figure Joseph out. I sort of tried to ask in the last show that he was just on there I tried to find out a bit more about him not being a DAL, because I don't think he is.
no, I don't think he is
No.
either. Yeah,
But
they
the
can't reverse
yeah.
to somebody else now
Yeah.
when he's
So
doing the tech stuff.
I was a bit mean, to be honest. Which is
You were goat.
which is most unlike me, as you know. And I said something extremely positive. So, well, you're as good at tech as you are at evolution, or whatever. Something like that. I wasn't exactly that, which is a bit naughty. I have to admit that.
Especially since he is a better tech guy than the previous people that were there.
But
I have to give him some credit for that. And he would well, I mean, he stopped, but he used to post my questions on there, which I always appreciated. So,
which is nice.
I have to give him some credit. I can't.
Yeah,
I have to tell the truth.
Well, you've always been a nice guy, and I've always been the bag rat.
I'm not always nice.
No, occasionally you've had a few words with Lumpin lately. You've said some good things there.
I just don't even. Yeah, I rarely go over to his channel, and I just think he's so hungry for attention from atheists. So he's, he comes over and goads people and does whatever he can because he wants people to go over there on his channel. and they just don't go because he's like poison, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he
So
and Steven are the worst.
I just can't see it lasting much longer. But I would quite like to know from Steve if you could ever trust him and have a good discussion. I would love to know, why he left and if it's been on good terms or not. I mean, he's going to stick up for Hovind come hell or high water. I will give him that, I think Hovind's possibly crapped on him a bit, or he's realized that he's not going to get to take over the business. I mean, ministry, I just don't know. But so he's
Yeah, I think the whole thing was over the teenage girl.
right. Yeah.
I think that's why he left, but I think he probably tried to leave on good terms about it.
Yes, because he's going to need money eventually again from somewhere when he loses his next job or whatever. Claude, you're so mean. It's like
Well,
this voices are telling me.
I only wish the best for him as long as he's good to people.
Well, I actually agree, and I wouldn't be like this. We all know Christians with whom we have disagreements that we never fight with. We fight with? We might have some differences of opinion with, for example, Christian Pike, but we don't fight or be nasty to him. We're very nice to these, and same with a Mark. We have probably some major differences, but we don't fight and argue.
Right.
We only the ones that are nasty holes. They're the ones, or just such gross hypocrites. That's the ones we have our arguments with. Yeah.
Yeah, and are they really? I just question sometimes whether they're like really following Christianity. Some of those people. Now I know it's not up to me to decide that, but it's like from what I've read about it, and when Christian talks about it, I learn about it too. And I just wonder if some of these people's behavior really fits the definition.
No, because they get very mean with it. Quite frankly, I probably feel I have been a Christian in the past. Now I feel I know different. But I probably wouldn't have been a predestination type person like Mark and Christian. But I'd be happy to discuss it with them without getting nasty about it. But these other guys, they end up calling them, heretics and all, which is very loaded work. What are you going to do?
Or they're not saved.
Put them on you're going to put them on a stake.
Well, that's what they would have done. The Lupins and Stevens would have burned people at the stake probably in their day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it, but that's what happened. Throughout, what was it? The 30 Years' War? It was just a horrible time in European history.
Yeah. And then the Joan of the Arc de Triomphe. Oh, sorry.
Right.
Joan of Arc. Not the Arc de Triomphe. But that's what some people would think. Oh, Joan of Arc de Triomphe? No.
I've been to the Arc de Triomphe.
It's great. It's
a couple times.
The world's craziest roundabout. You know that.
Right.
Or do you call them roundabouts or circulars?
Yeah, roundabout.
Oh my God, you can be entertained.
And they're tough. They're tough. I drove when I went to Australia for the first time. I flew into Sydney.
Yeah.
And there's not really a freeway system, like there is here, where it's kind of easy to drive. So I was just thrown into, I'm driving on the opposite side of the road.
Side of the road, it makes it hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm thrown into these 2-lane roundabouts, with buses with a bus on the side of me, and meanwhile I have like the map on my on my lap. Trying to get out to the Great Western Highway because then I'm free and clear. I'm good to go. But getting through that city was like, it was stressful.
And this was what in the days of no GPS and cobblestones.
Right. Yeah. So I was looking at a paper map, that
so that's
I was
very
provided
hard.
with. It was really hard. Yeah.
Because quite often I'm in a situation lately where sometimes I go to countries, drive on the left, sometimes I drive on the right.
Right.
And it gets good. So I actually put a piece of paper on the dashboard of the car, and I'll say, if I'm on the right, I say keep right, and I say turn right at roundabouts. And if I'm on the
Oh,
left, I
that's
put
good. That's a
keep
good
left.
idea.
Someone told me another one was keep the bitch in the ditch, but I thought that was a bit mean,
Yeah.
because
Well, that's,
the passenger on the
I
if the passenger side is by the ditch,
I think about it the opposite way. The driver's near the center line, and I
all
can
right,
always turn the
yeah,
right way. But I remember in Australia, I turned the
yeah,
wrong way into the wrong lane one time. And
yeah.
fortunately, nobody was coming, and I corrected myself before it became
Yes.
an issue.
You,
But
you know when it happens when you stop somewhere and then you take off again
right,
and you turn on the natural way that you're used to. But so if you do that, and then the other thing is, I'd say if I get confused, follow the car in front, who unless
that's
that person
true.
is a
Yeah,
tourist, you're going to
let's
come off all right.
drive drunk.
But I guess too, at your age, it gets very hard for change. When you're an older person like yourself. I'm being
Yeah,
mean. I'm being mean. Didn't
bitch
you
in
hear
the
me?
bitch. I heard you. I heard you. Bitch in the
Keep the bitch in the
ditch.
ditch. It's very sexist. I don't approve of it,
Yeah.
but it means that
No,
the
but it is
passenger in
it
your
is an easy way
car,
to remember
yeah,
it.
someone told me that, and I thought,
Oh
oh
god.
my god, I can't really say that,
That's
but
horrible.
in the interest of road safety, that's why I'm saying this, purely in the
Right.
interest
Right.
of road safety. Otherwise, because I'm a gentleman, I would never say these sorts of things. Yeah.
And then it was easy once I got on the highway and,
Yeah.
then it was a piece of cake at that point and I just had no problems whatsoever, except I made a quick I was hungry. I had to drive I landed in
Hmm.
the airplane and then I had to drive maybe 2 or 300 miles to get to where I was going to stay that
Oh,
night. I
were
was
you
going to
going to
I was going to the
Canberra?
Warrumbungle Mountains, so I had to drive through the
Oh,
Blue
Blue
Mountains, and
Mountains, yes.
I was headed to the
Wow.
Warrumbungle Mountains to go backpacking, and that was my
Mm.
first real adventure that I
Oh,
went on. So I stopped at a McDonald's,
yeah,
and I went through the drive-through, and I said, "I want 3 hamburgers with onions only."
yeah.
And so I get it back out onto the highway, and I open up these hamburgers to scarf them down, and they just gave me onions and onions and the bun.
No, they took it literally.
They took it literally, which here they
No,
give you the patty and the onions,
and the
but
onions, yeah, yeah.
I scarfed them down. They were good. They were just onion
Yeah.
sandwiches,
So
basically.
which is
And
oh, that would have been good. Well, stone the crows, as they say over there. Did you put another shrimp on the barbie?
oh, God, I took that backpacking
Mm.
trip. Hi, Deviant.
Hi.
And that was my first real adventure. So I spent the night, I
Mm.
slept I'm talking about Australia. First I made to
Yeah,
Australia. And I slept, and then the next day I went and got the key from the ranger, and I was going to backpack up to a hut up in the middle of the Warrumbungle Mountains, which is
yeah,
known for its rock spires.
yeah.
And oh, it's awesome. I mean, I saw a bunch of cockatoos in a tree, and I said, this would be really cool. I was looking through binoculars,
Yeah.
and I said, this would be really cool if I saw a kangaroo. And I swear I put my binoculars from the cockatoos in the tree down onto the ground, and there was kangaroos that just went by right at that moment.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Oh.
this is just great. And then it rained on me about 4 inches, and I was all alone, and I slept up there in the hut up at the high peaks of the Warrumbungles, and it's
Oh.
like I'm a long way from home is what I was thinking, but it was fun.
Did
Really,
you find the
really fun.
people friendly?
Oh
Australia?
yeah.
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 And
Yeah, I
the
found them really
Sheilas,
friendly.
how's the Sheilas?
I have a pretty good story
Uh-oh.
about it. I was camping,
Uh-oh.
I I was camping by myself in one of the
Yeah.
national parks, Border Ranges National Park, and
Yeah.
I had my guitar with me, and I was playing Nowhere
Ah.
Man by the Beatles.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, off in the distance, I stopped playing, and I'm drinking some
Mm,
wine, enjoying
mm.
myself, and I'm all alone. I have the whole campground to myself, and I hear in the distance 2 women singing, he's a real nowhere man. And I'm like, what?
Oh,
You know, and I
wow.
couldn't see, and then it stopped, and I'm like, that was kind of weird,
Mm.
And then they came by as they were returning from their hike. They came by my campsite, and one of the gals, they were probably pretty close to my age. She invited me to her
Tent.
house, no, to her
Oh.
home, and she
Oh.
lived. No, I wish. Um,
Yeah.
she lived on a Buddhist
Oh.
monastery up
Yep.
near Nimbin, which is up
Yep.
in northern part of New South Wales, I believe.
Yes.
And there's a place there called the Bodhidharma, but
Oh.
it's a whole Buddhist community. It's a commune, and she invited me to her house to spend the night, and I did some work for her to kind of pay for my food and stuff. So I moved a bunch of rocks for her.
Oh, yes, we
And
know. Yeah. Food for a dude. They call it food for a dude.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it was innocent. I didn't hook up with her.
No, that's fine.
If that was your question.
No, you know me.
But
I
it was
would
really
never.
nice. It was just like spur of the moment. I didn't expect that was going to happen.
Yeah. They're very fun people, and they have a great turn of phrase. Like they'll be quite insulting, like in a funny way, and they have these phrases, that they come up with. A lot of Australians, very funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I went with Miguel like the third time I went. And
the Miguel the now Miguel.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And we went out of Brisbane. The second time I went out of first time Sydney, second time Melbourne, third time Brisbane. And so we went up into the rainforest into Lamington National Park, and we ran into a ranger hike where they were having, some older Australians were going on a hike with the ranger, and they called it a smoko when they took a break.
Yes, take a smoko.
Have you heard that term before?
Yes, I have. Yes, because in the days when everybody smoked, they'd stop for a smoko break. Because it doesn't, but it still used that term,
Yeah, they still use that term, and they were just taking a little food break on the trail.
Yeah. The other thing is that many cases in the outback, they'd boil up a billy. Do you know what that means?
Does that mean a goat?
No. Funnily enough, boiling a billy was like an aluminium pot. You boil it with water to have a drink. So that's a billy in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you boil it. Could you put the billy on? Means would you make a little fire or put this on a hot stove? But what I was getting to is that many of those places, they had these particular things called thermets, and you literally put a fire underneath them. They're like a jug with a V-shaped funnel inside, and you'd put it. They contain water, and the fire would go up and heat the water, and that was boiling it too, for tea or coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. Deviant, tell us more about your crazy ride. And can you and Big Bad Mama talk without me for just a few minutes? I have to check on something I'm cooking in my little apartment. Is that okay? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's something to Deviant. It kind of bothered me during Christian's during his Bible study. It's like, I don't know how to say it. But it's like people just get off the topic, and they don't respect the Bible study itself. And, I'm an atheist, and it's like, I don't, but it's like, I just think people should respect him and keep on the topic. And I don't think it's a place for like comedians, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. It's like, it's one thing when we just have our regular shows.
Right. Get-togethers, yeah.
Yeah. But when it's the Bible study, I for one try to, like...
Well, you and I are the same. we try to ask questions that are relevant, and
Yeah,
because we're interested.
exactly. And like be conscious and have the mentality of not necessarily being in church, because I've never been in a church where you
Right.
like ask the priest questions, but something to that effect, that we are talking about people's faith, and
Yeah.
it, it's not like a debate forum or a freaking zoo or or a nightclub with stand up or
Right. You know,
and
and I'm talking about Phantom did great, I thought. You know,
oh yeah,
Phantom,
absolutely.
and Bruce is Bruce,
Yeah.
and but he's at least he's talking about religion and stuff, even if he interrupts and everything. But
Mhm.
I mean, he could be, blocked sometimes. But um,
Yes.
it's it's like it's Christian's show at that point, and if he's telling people to get back on topic,
Hmm.
they should get back on topic,
Yeah,
or they should leave.
and they should listen to, like, when he tries to talk and people just have their own little discussion or debate or war of words. War of words. That was hard
Yeah,
to. Uh,
war of words.
yes, it sounds very
That's
much.
a good title for a song, actually.
Hmm, it is. It's not like a trall, like
A what?
dun 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 dun.
Oh, it already exists? Is that already a song?
No, 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 no.
No.
It's not that. It can't be that sort of song. It has to be
No.
something much more.
It's a war of words. What I don't like when atheists come on the Bible study and try to argue against God. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, because
It's not the time and place to do that. There's other
exactly.
streams for those discussions. You're
Yeah,
disrespecting the host of the show, who is a Christian that's giving a he's preaching, he's giving a lesson.
exactly.
And it just, I was like, I had to leave. I was just upset, and I don't know why I got so upset about it, but
No, but I completely agree with you, and I feel the same way with when, like, as Bruce did, especially in the beginning, uh, because I don't think it's so. Yes, I do agree with you, uh, but I also don't like when Christians of other faiths come in and, like, ah y- you're wrong, not
yeah.
having a conversation about it, but being like argumentative,
No,
because
come in like Daniel and be respectful. I mean,
exactly, exactly.
Daniel is an example of somebody who can come in and have a discussion, whether you agree with him or not. Hi, Josh. Good to
Yeah.
see you.
Yo, Deviant, Big Bad Mama,
Hi.
Pod, what's up?
Hi.
So yeah, Daniel's able to have a discussion on the
Yeah,
topic, and I respect him for that.
Sometimes, if he doesn't get too emotional.
Well, I've never seen him like yell or anything like that. I mean, he doesn't like when people tell him his church that he shouldn't be part of his church, or that his organization is. I mean, he's really tied to the church. It's not like maybe some other Christians who don't have a specific church. And so he takes it, I think, very serious when somebody does diss his church. And I know there's differences in opinions and stuff, but I think I've never seen Daniel lose his temper unless somebody like really disrespected him, and I only have rarely seen that.
No, and
Daniel's cool.
yeah, he is, and I mean, so Pike isn't like, he allows for a lot, but he has made it clear on several occasions that he don't invite people to the panel that he thinks are going to just be disruptive or
Not on
hateful.
topic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Hateful too. Yeah.
but and as I said, I really try to always be conscious about it and not be dragged in and try to keep others down. But it is difficult, and also I can't really like be yelling over the others, and even if I were, it wouldn't help.
Well, I was telling Christian just leave.
Yeah,
I mean, and I was, I mean, it sounded like I was joking, but I was actually serious. Just your lesson is over. The conversation has devolved to whatever it's people are talking about, which was hard to say. Just end it from your perspective,
yeah,
and then the people can just like go on and stuff. But I could tell that he kind of wanted to get out of there at some point.
hmm but I see Phantom in the
Hey,
comments,
Phantom, good to see you.
just to be very, very, very clear, he came in and acted like a mellowing force, like a
Right.
reasonable voice.
Well, he led a discussion that was a
Yeah,
great discussion,
yeah,
and he didn't interrupt and didn't make, cracking jokes and stuff like that, and didn't push like atheism onto Christians and stuff like that.
no,
That's what kind of, there's a time and a place for that, but it's not on that stream. It's not on that. It's not on the Bible study.
exactly. Yeah, no, I fully
I sound like an
agree.
old fuddy-duddy or something, but I don't
Well,
know.
if you are, then I am too. So we're
Okay.
two. Yes.
Yeah, it was good. It was good discussion, though.
Yeah.
I thought up to a point.
How are you, Josh?
I'm eating pizza.
Ooh.
Ooh.
What kind of pizza is it? Is it
You'll never
pineapple?
be able to guess. Never.
Meat lovers.
No.
No, I think it's a vegetarian.
No.
That's no.
Okay.
It's
Chicken.
just it's just regular pepperoni.
Oh, regular pepperoni.
Oh.
Okay, that's probably my favorite pizza. Regular pepperoni.
Oh,
Missy
wait,
Ma
can
was trying to
someone?
ask you a question.
Yeah. Oh, BBM, what happened with the PGs today? I literally missed everything.
Oh, is that Missy Maud asking that, or you, Deviant?
No, it's Missing Mod.
Oh, okay. From what I understand, Tim, of course, we knew had got kicked out or whatever by Steven. But I guess within the last 24 hours, they had some meeting where Andrew, Jeremiah, Buckingham, Ryan, I guess, was part of this meeting, and Tim all left the PGs. And Joseph sounded like he was on the fence. I mean, Joseph, I think he has a show that's supposed to start about right now. So I don't know if the show's going on or not, but yesterday they didn't have any shows whatsoever. So I kept trying to get Dan to say something about it in the chat, and he goes, "Oh, you'll have to stay tuned and whatever." It's like, well, I'm not that, I don't really care that
So
much.
so who's left? It's like Steven,
Achilles
Achilles,
and
and Dan.
Steven and who? And
Dan.
Dan. Right, right. The
Yeah.
dream team.
Right.
And Achilles should just get out of there.
I
I mean,
know. I know. I wish he would. I wish he would. I do love that he's back on doing his riding
yes,
his dirt bikes, and I think
he
that's
seems
really, really
happier.
healthy. He does. He does.
Which a
And that
happy
makes me happy.
Achilles is better than a depressed Achilles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, I always told him that he was depressed and that he needed to get out there. And I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad. I was glad to hear that he bought a new motorcycle and was going and doing what he loved. And because it means he's not like hopeless about the world ending any week now or whatever. Because he's like,
Right.
it's going to happen any day now, almost to
And
that point. And
like
that's
he
depressing.
has this personality that he like hyper focuses on something, like dives into it 100%. I know he told me that at one point in life it was his work,
Yeah.
but to like just sit inside and go into all this end times thing,
Right.
and like,
Cut yourself off from relationships.
yeah.
Not
And
healthy.
I mean, I know there are people in this community who doesn't think very highly of him, but
That's one.
yeah. But like my
But nobody here on this panel.
no, absolutely, no, never, and I would never mention any names. Claude. Claude Bawles. No, but I've had the conversations I have had with him. I do see someone who is at heart a good person.
Claude, we can't hear you muttering in the background there, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, Claude's gonna kick me off the panel.
I said he was a good flat earther and wonderful to teach your kids about science.
Oh, jeez. I've had some discussions with him where I think, yes, he has a sense of humor. He can be funny.
Yeah.
And I do think he does have a decent heart, you know. I think
Yeah.
he's just been, and I don't know what role Hovind plays in all this, but when you think that Kent Hovind's the second most important Christian next to Jesus, which is what Achilles said, I mean, that's strange.
Yeah, that's very strange. That's very, very strange.
And just yes, disturbing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there are good Christians, there are bad Christians, and then there is Hovind.
Right. Who I'm not even sure he's a Christian and not just a charlatan, but it's hard to say.
It is.
Could be both.
Could be both. What? He's orange.
What?
Missing Mod says he's
I'm missing
orange.
I don't see Missy Mod's I don't have the comments on here.
Oh.
Oh, there's Robin. Hi, Robin. Hi, Azar.
Okay. She's answering Robin Webster. Says, "What about Trump?"
Oh, yeah, he's
Missing Mod
orange.
says, "Good to see you, Robin." And then he's orange. I thought she was talking about
Kent.
About Kent. I was like, what? I'm sorry, Missing Mod. I confused myself there.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Oh man, I've been talking this whole time and I've been muted.
Have you really?
like agreeing with you guys and like laughing and like... And then I'm like, they really don't hear me, and I was muted.
I just thought we just thought you were eating pizza, but yeah, you were muted the whole
I have
time.
my phone on the other screen, so I'm like eating pizza, like listening, talking back.
Oh,
Hey,
The
so
cloud is
hold
back
on.
too.
So
your
what was
volume
going
is a
on
bit
with Tim?
low.
Tim is so cool.
So Josh, did you get the part where I talked about the Proverbs guys and like 5 of them left yesterday?
I did hear that there was like some type of meeting, and
yeah.
But
so that's the latest. I don't think I have anything beyond that. But
honestly, it's funny because they hate Daniel Newman so much just simply because he's Orthodox. But
right.
the way that Daniel's church has their structure, they claim it to be biblical, but they believe that the Orthodox Church was like passed down from the apostolic fathers. So, the Pauls, the James, all of these people, they established their own church, and they can trace their lineage all the way back to today. So they're really like in this game about a church, about some type of congregation. They got rules. They got all these different it's structure. They're very structured.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is because the moment I first came across Proverbs Guys ministry, I basically asked them so what's the point of all of this? So you just can't find a church you like, so you just make up your own, or it's what is this group? And it's it's just people who gather together and discuss scripture. And I'm like, yeah, but now I feel like it turned from a reading club into some kind of power move. I don't know what these guys are trying to accomplish.
Well, they claim it's a ministry. I mean, I think you're right at the beginning. That's kind of what they would claim, that it was just people getting together, but then it kind of turned into this ministry, and I think they took themselves really, I mean, Dan takes himself so seriously.
I call it a business street
Frank.
because it's a business, yeah.
Well, that was Bruce
saying,
talking about the what about buttermilk. I'm just referring. Sorry, Josh, I was answering Frank Flowers there. It was just a funny thing that Bruce said. He said with an accent, "What about buttermilk?" And then Dan Pawsey told him that he's going to block him if he keeps talking. And Bruce kept talking. And Dan went from 1 month to 7 months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, you're blocked. And he said, one more word, Bruce, and you're blocked forever. And Bruce was blocked forever. And then a week later, he was back on. And Claude made a novel, testable prediction about it. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate. It was so funny, but you had to have Dan's whiny voice to, 1 month, okay, 2 months, 3. Well, somebody called Steven.
Somebody called Steven.
Yeah, 3 months, 5 months, 6 months, right? Permanent ban. So funny.
And so I asked Dan today, I said, Dan, you're the president. Why don't you have a mute button? He goes, I have one now, in the chat. He was bragging about having a mute button.
Because it's just him and Steven.
Right. And that was my response is, now there's nobody to mute, so who cares?
Right.
He says, what about that guy who was cussing at Mark Stoney? Now, who was that?
Okay, so in the video I made, I put those 2 events together, but those 2 events weren't happening together when Dustin was yelling at Mark. I just put those together in a video to make it kind of confusing because I thought it was funny. But yeah, Dustin was yelling at Mark, and it's not the first time they got into it. That's Dustin Buck, Frank. So Dustin Buck and Mark have gotten into it in the past, and Dustin has threatened to come over there and fight him, and I don't know it. I don't know what they were fighting about. Actually, I don't know what it was all about.
There's a bit of that, because even who was it, the Achilles, who like. He was threatening Dustin. He said, if you say some words about to Lupin or whatever, you're going to get hurt by me. It's real big noting. And then he realizes the recording is on. He goes, someone says, we're live. And he goes, no, we're not. Oh, hello, everybody. Do you remember that one?
I do remember that, yeah.
And then,
how could
but
anyone?
someone says Dustin's got more reasonable recently. You know what? I'll have to be big person and say, yes, he has. And some of his points are actually quite good. So if he could only just control excesses, I would have to agree with that, just to show that I'm not.
He's had some really good takes on what's happening. And I don't think I could have put it any better than he did a couple of times about the guys. And
some of it's so unintentionally funny, like, no, I don't know, something's off about Dan, and it's not just his mail order bride. You know, so,
right. It's not his mail order bride, but something's a little off with Dan.
And so he sort of like throws him in it. And the same with Stephen too, you know. I was saying, well, yeah, he does. He's talking about Stephen owing big amounts of child support. So all the things that other people have said, he's picked up on the truths. And it's really quite funny because they had one coming up the other day, which was meant to be a live stream, was meant to be about evolution is worse than child abuse.
Right.
And I was going to put up alongside it some clips from it and the bit where Dustin talks about Stephen owing child support. And I was going to say that's the real abuse. But of course, I didn't get the opportunity because the show never streamed.
They'll have it. They'll have it at some point.
Yeah.
You'll get your material.
Someone says Dan tries to be like Ken.
I
don't know about that or not, but
no, I think Dan tries to be like Stephen. Yes. Stephen then tries to be like Kent. It's picking order.
I mean, as I recall, I first ran into Dan, I think, in Kent's chat, if I'm not mistaken. So,
really?
Robin's she's always bothered by our criticisms of Dan, but I think she's kidding.
So he's taken it upon himself.
Yes, he does.
We have tried so hard, and he just makes it worse and worse and worse and worse.
He's a wonderful clown. I'll give him that. You know,
that's true. That's true.
But he takes himself seriously, and
he puts his foot in his mouth worse and worse every time. I mean, he just.
It's quite funny. On one of the recent streams that they did have, Ryan is in the chat. You know, the one who's banned.
Yeah.
And so he says hi all, and then Jimenez, which is of course Dan, says hello all, and hello Ryan, how are you? And Ryan says, I'm well, Jimenez, thanks. Ryan then says, next time I'm sick, Tim can give me some doctoring. And I'm thinking, is that doctrine or doctoring? And by sick, is that the unnatural relationship or not? I was being a little bit naughty there, but I did, of course, it didn't.
Did you put that in the comments?
Tried to, but you know. So, so, and then Proverbs guy says, anytime, my brother Ryan. And so it's all just a big farce, that whole thing with Ryan.
Well, supposedly he's left for good, so we'll see what happens with that.
Well, maybe they will be forced to take him back because they don't have many hosts left.
No, but he was one of the ones that left the ministry yesterday.
Because he left anyway, but the double leaving.
Well, I mean, what they said was he's going to get counseling, and then we're going to make a decision at that point. So they never really kicked him out, as I recall.
What do? You go and see a counselor on how to normalize an unnatural relationship.
It's a minister.
And will it be like? Will it teach you how to make an unnatural relationship natural? Or
I don't. Yeah, I do.
I'm being naughty.
I mean, we still don't know the story on that, so it's like nobody can answer what really happened there, and so I told Dan he was weird earlier. He said, "You can't be the only weird one out here." LOL. I got a good laugh from that. Let's see, Maud.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
He likes Dan.
I
So
want to add.
is everyone here an atheist? Is this Claude fella an atheist?
I'm an ex-Christian.
But
So I'm now an atheist, I would say. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely not. Yeah. No. So now I see things a lot differently than when I was young. Yeah.
Deviant and I are atheists.
So I'm an atheist. Yeah.
Wait, you said you're theist or atheist?
No, atheist.
Atheist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But so, see, here's my problem. Like, it's not that I don't believe in evolution. I'm really just not sold on it.
Have you actually studied it in detail? I mean, have you really delved into it?
I would say that my knowledge about the chronological order of the Bible and the timeline of the Bible and the stories of the Bible, I would say my knowledge is pretty good compared to what I know about evolution. So I am more or less ignorant on all the nuances. But when someone tells me that, like, it was millions of years ago and that dinosaurs roamed the land, like, I just can't visualize that. It's just out. It's not even. Maybe I do have some bias or presuppositions, or maybe I'm indoctrinated. But it's like, if you're telling me that there were dinosaurs and they lived 150 million years ago or however long,
65 million years ago, I think they went extinct, something like that. But that was like big dinosaurs. Birds are dinosaurs, so we still have dinosaurs to this day.
Like the Komodo dragon?
No, birds. Birds are theropod. They're avian dinosaurs is how they're classified. So all the dinosaurs did not go extinct. Only the
Okay, but so
yeah. Go ahead.
On every point, I just seem to like have a hard time. Even if you consider it true, like, I'm just having a hard time accepting it, because it's hard. Like I said, it's hard for me to visualize 65 million years ago. Like, our like history, as far as we can go back, like up until about like the 1600s, 1700s, did we really start like moving forward with like technology and stuff?
Josh, can I perhaps help a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
It probably will make it worse, knowing me. But I have trouble when I look up into the space and fathoming the distances and the whole, because we do live in an incredible world. If I can go back to when I was raised in a Christian house, and I can remember going to school, and my mother said to me, "You'll probably be told by the teacher that we evolved from blah, blah, blah. You don't have to believe that," you see. Anyway, it turns out they became very good friends with a science teacher, the head of science at the school I was at, the École. And they asked him one day, and he said, "It's not what I want to believe," but he said, "It is, the overwhelming evidence is for evolution." So to give them their credit, they changed their minds on that too. And I think it's a matter of being able to look at to try and putting aside, they had a preconceived idea that the God and evolution were incompatible. And of course, that's not necessarily the case. So I think when you look at the greatest scientific minds of this world, I tend to believe their evidence over someone like Kent Hovind or the other bozos on Proverbs guys. That's all I can say.
I mean,
Okay.
It is hard to think of things in terms of deep time if you're not, if you haven't actually given it a lot of thought and studied the evidence. And, I know that the timeline for creationists is basically the same timeline as we have for the advent of civilizations themselves. So Sumeria, I guess, was maybe the first civilization deviant, maybe in the Mesopotamia, maybe 3000 BC or something like that. And it kind of goes back. Oh no, this is wrong.
So it's not wrong per se, but we can't actually say which came first, Egypt or Mesopotamia, because they rise up at basically the exact same time.
All right.
But I would like to, while it's on screen, can you read the comment, Josh? Can you see the comment on screen?
Yes.
What's going on here?
Do you want me to read it?
It says, "This is what an honest person sounds like." Talking about Josh, he's self-reflective and willing. No, I'm not at all. I actually said the other day that if you had a time machine and you took me back and you proved to me that Jesus wasn't real, like with a time machine, I would still not believe it.
You even said that to me, but that in and of itself is being honest.
Yeah.
I just so look. This is okay. In the grand scheme of things, right? Like numbers and mathematics, like they're a real thing. It's like statistics, and I guess a lot of evolution is statistics. Like some people
evolution is, there's several disciplines of science which have come to the same conclusions about evolution, whether you're talking about genetics, whether you're talking about geology, paleontology, the study of fossils, biology, and even physics, age dating. They all corroborate one another. And it's those corroborations that make the theory of evolution so strong, that these different disciplines of science have come to the exact same conclusions about evolution. And so you can't just study one line of evidence and like piecemeal try to debunk evolution, because it's in the evidence, supporting evidence, that the strength of the theory lies. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so in the grand scheme of things, like in either concept for me is hard to grasp. Like to try to grasp the idea that us as a human, the idea of evolution really got revolutionized and like generally accepted or all around the world. Like when was this, like 1500s?
Well, even in the 19th century, scientists were accepting evolution.
No, but at what point would you say that the general consensus kicked in, that we now all believe that evolution is a fact?
Do you mean the scientific community, or the people, or the basic people on the planet, or what have you?
Like the layman?
The layman. That's a good question. I don't know.
I'm talking to both extent, right? I don't necessarily know if you are or are not a scientist, but like we would be the layman person, and even I know that they teach evolution and they teach it as truth, and I'm not really, I really don't have like a dog in the fight, or a bone in the fight, or whatever the phrase is. Like regardless if like evolution is true or not,
you can still be a Christian.
But like I'm telling you, both the ideas of like the Christian Bible as well are not easy things to just generally accept. Like you're supposed to accept that this all good God flooded the world and everyone except 8 souls die. Like this is like a whole nother degree of like element of control. Like to think that there's an entity that can cause the waters to rise to the mountaintops and for everyone to die in that process, and then these 8 people survived and repopulated the earth to what it is now. That's so I'm either being asked to accept that however many years ago, before we evolved from our previous um, Homo erectus or whatever comes right before us.
Right.
I always feel like those lines are blurred. Um, so it's kind of hard for me to accept, well, you want me to believe that that before humans were humans as we know ourselves now, we were just like some kind of like wild animal that eventually developed some type of consciousness to the point where we are now, right? And then the more common, which what I feel is more grounded history kind of kicks in. The humans on a global scale and what we've done in the last like 10,000 years. That's really as far back as we really have any kind of clear.
Well, no. I mean, we have cave paintings that go back tens of thousands of years, for
Yeah.
one thing.
Just subjective.
Well, no, it's measurable. I mean, it's radiometric dating. So, I mean, it's measurable, and you
So
know,
if I wrote like the graffiti on the walls, they can measure it and tell you exactly how many weeks ago or how many days ago that graffiti was put there.
No, because that's too young.
yeah, it
That's
would be
too young.
tens of
So we
thousands of years ago. I mean,
Okay,
for
so see,
carbon dating,
hold
yeah.
on. You both gave different responses. She said no because it's too young, and then you said yes. So
No,
I
no,
want to
it's
hear.
too young to date using carbon dating. You can't just date things in days. I mean, you're dating things with carbon dating. Radiometric dating requires daughter material to be present as opposed to just the parent material.
So I mean, I
And
think
so
we
you
have
have to have radiometric decay of the element in order to be able to measure that. And so you have to have some time, depending on the technique you're using. Deviant, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have time going by before you can use some of these techniques.
yes.
And
So
go ahead, Deviant.
for instance, when we do say C14 dating, excuse me, we in archaeology we have the BC and BCE, or CE and BCE. We also have like a timestamp or an origo of time that's labeled BP, like Bob Parker, BP. That stands for before present. And before present in this context is 1950. The reason for that is that the isotopes, the decay of C14 isotopes were mapped and sequenced throughout time in 1949, and it was presented and accepted. It had gone through the various testing and peer review and all of that in 1950. And it's also true that we cannot use C14 dating to date anything after 1950 for several reasons. One being that not enough decay. I can't really remember the
And
hot.
atmospheric composition, right, has
Yeah,
changed.
and the composition has changed due to the testing of atomic bombs
Right.
that happened in the 1950s. But it should also be said that C14, while it's maybe the most known isotope in popular science and pop culture, there are a vast array of different um, isotopes from different material that's being used. And unfortunately, I'm an archaeologist, yes, but
Potassium argon dating,
yeah,
rubidium strontium dating, but we also have
archaeologists don't date. We leave that to laboratories.
right, and we also have relative dating techniques using trace fossils, but we index fossils, I have to say, but we have dendrochronology of tree rings. But I mean, we've carbon dated the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it fits perfectly with the date that was come up with through radiomet or through just knowing about the history of when it was written. And so we have these corroborations of dates that we can match up to one another. We have these lake sediment layers that are called varves, and it's an annual layer that's laid down in these ancient lakes going back tens of thousands of years. And we can count those layers, and we can date in those layers the leaves, the twigs, and the insects that were stuck in those layers, and it's a perfect match. So the carbon dating matches perfectly with the number of varve layers in that particular lake. So there's just so much data that shows an old Earth. I don't know how somebody can be a young Earth creationist with all the information we have. Now I can see an old Earth creationist, I guess, but I really can't. But it's at least a step forward in the right direction, I think.
Can I, Big Bad Mama, you can perhaps help me with this, but one of the real, if you want to use the word miracles about evolution, is that when Charles Darwin came up with the theory of evolution, it was based on observations, but many scientific discoveries that have since corroborated the theory of evolution weren't in existence. We didn't know about DNA.
Right.
We definitely couldn't map the genome, and all those things that have happened since. Not one has contradicted evolution. All have supported it. It's remarkable that could happen. And I'm happy if people want to believe the likes of Kent Hovind, whose sole claim to scientific fame is shooting rubber bands and maybe flying paper airplanes, fair enough. But I go with the real, proven, brilliant scientists in their field. I'm not a patch on any of them. And it really irks me when these dickheads like Hovind and other imposters, scientific imposters, influence the scientific beliefs of otherwise sensible people. It's a tragedy. And
especially of kids, yeah.
Kids growing up in that have their education and their future wrecked. You know what they'll be saying, those kids in 10 years' time? Would you like fries with that? That's what they'll be saying. So I get agitated about it. Not with you, Joshua, the questions, but it really annoys me when these shitheads somehow get a foot in the door, and if for any reason they somehow are able to influence the curriculum in schools, it's the end of America as a serious scientific country. It's just tragic. Just a tragedy.
I mean, we see a lot of Christians that accept evolution. I mean, I would say most Christians in the world accept the theory of evolution, and they might look at the Bible as more metaphorical than a creationist who's just looking at it as literal history. They're looking at Genesis as metaphor. They're looking at Exodus as metaphor. They're looking at even the New Testament, the virgin birth and the resurrection as myth and metaphor. There are several ways to look at the Bible that, the creationists might not be looking at.
Claude, sorry, I'm jumping. Can you post the link in the chat, Mark?
Yes, I've just done it. Sorry, yeah.
Oh, good.
Just to give you an idea, I have another 25 minutes, so it's worth coming on. But
sounds
it's
good.
sorry, in just under half an hour.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hey guys, I do just like I am loving the discussion, but in its 3 or 4 of you defending the evolutionist position, or evolution position, the points are kind of getting away from me.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
Josh,
so
It's just,
we
I
got to
want
be
to be able
very.
to respond to like
Ju-
one thing,
just
but
know
each
that
of you says like 3 or 4 things, so it's kind of like
it's too much. I get that, but
Yeah, no
so
dogpiling, please. That's not
no,
cool.
Well, no,
the way
we
I
haven't
see it,
dogpiled him. We've just given him a lot of information.
yeah, the way
And
I
so-
see it, Josh, is we're not attacking.
well,
This is not
let me
like a
let me just make a
debate.
couple more of my like questions to like kind of, because
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
said, my point is that
I
whether
just
you
want you to know that we don't. We no one here wants you to feel bad or overwhelmed or anything.
But
It's
we
just
do want to
friendly.
convert you to scientific thinking.
well, so here's the thing, man. I like to try to sit here and to tell you that I know any more than you would be silly, but I know a good amount of things, and like I really like to break things down like with the examples. All right, so like if I
Yeah.
set the example that, and this is kind of why like I want to like get more to the points. My point was that if that you trace human existence back into these cave drawings, and you said that the aging methods that are used, and you gave me a whole bunch of examples that they can tell that those cave drawings were 100 million years ago or however long, right? Now, and I give you an example of like, if I find graffiti on the wall, can I measure this graffiti? And you tell me, no, it's too new. Like the number is too new. So one thing that I feel that it's always like time is a big factor in evolution, and it's like that, and that's kind of the point I was bringing up about grasping this concept of hundreds of millions of years ago, when I'm only going to live 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, whatever, right? So it's hard for me to like also believe that, like I said, that the whole world was flooded. But you know, I ultimately feel like I'm making this decision based on like my faith. I am more of a Bible literalist. But go ahead, Mark. I know you probably wanted to say a couple things.
No, I just wanted to say hello, and I didn't know your name was Josh. I was just going to ask your name, so there's no name on there, so I just wanted to know just sort of who I was speaking to. And so the literal reading of the Bible, I guess a point that I make is that nobody takes it 100% literally. Like, for instance, when it says there's 4 corners of the earth, kind of thing. Like, you don't believe that the earth has literal corners, right?
Yeah. So I mean, we're talking about Bible interpretation, and I believe that someone needs to have you need to have a criteria for determining whether or not you're going to interpret it as literal versus metaphorical, and I think that there should be a criteria. And I think a lot of this stuff is still a lot of things that we can understand now, right? So like if I say, man, I'm very blue today, like I can be covered in blue paint, or I could be sad. So when it comes to the Bible and like taking things in terms of the 4 corners of the world, is the world actually like a checkers board that has 4 corners, right? So
right.
I think an honest Christian would evaluate all the options. They would evaluate, well, is there actually 4 corners? They would evaluate, or is this just a figure of speech that someone says, like, I'm gonna rule from or the America from sea to shining sea, or whatever, right?
Yep.
So is it meant to be taken literally? Is it meant to be taken metaphorical? And I think that a good criteria to start off with is common sense. So,
well, I'm not so sure common sense is that common or sensical. There's a lot of things that we call counterintuitive a lot of stuff in physics is counterintuitive. Like, why do objects drop at exactly the same rate when air friction isn't involved? It's counterintuitive. So I'm not sure I would agree with that. But it sounds like you said, look around the world, we look around the world, and when it conflicts with the literal reading of the Bible, like if it says that there's 4 corners, we look around the world and see, it's not like a checkerboard. As you said, we're all aware of that. It's not like a checkerboard with literal corners. Then we say, hey, they were being metaphorical, or it's some kind of what we call hyperbole. It's a way of describing things in more of a poetic way than a literal way. I think that a lot of Christians see that with things like the age of the earth and evolution, because the evidence is so overwhelming. They look around and they see it and they say, well, then some of the stuff that was said in the Bible is hyperbole. It is that, this actually happened, and the way that they're describing the creation of Adam and Eve is sort of poetic rather than literal.
Again, so I think a lot of this, every individual ends up making an ultimate decision, right? And for me, like I said, I'm more of a Bible literalist. I believe that God created one man, Adam, and made one woman from his rib, Eve, and then they were instructed not to eat from this tree, and they were deceived or weren't. They were one day old. I don't know. I don't know. From the moment that God created them until the moment that they went over to this tree and ate from it, we don't. There's a lot of these things that aren't specified in the Bible, right? So we don't really have these time frames. The story just kind of goes, he created them, and then the serpent came, and then they ate, and then now all man is doomed to death, and so on and so forth. So when I think of science, like I said, when I said one of my criteria is going to be common sense. So like, because I've experienced things as well. So I experienced things like the water, right? Like how water goes into the clouds and it rains down the mountains, into the rivers, into the ocean. I can see this and I can accept it. It's not like trying to believe that God created Adam and Eve. Like, I know that's not easy to accept because I was never there to observe it. But something like, if I'm gonna believe that God is real and I believe that God is capable of preserving His perfect word, I take it at face value. So, but when I think of science and like the things like I can observe, like like I said, the water system, like I have to draw the line somewhere. Like eventually our technology got good enough where we could look at the molecules and count the atoms and look at the and that's great. And I believe in a lot of this stuff. I believe that like if me and my mom both took a DNA test, the science exists that would be able to say that that's the mother.
Tell how you're related. Yeah.
So and this is kind of like my like feeble maybe Christian mindset here, where it's like when you start adding all this time now, and you're like, I can understand that me and my mom both took a DNA test, and the DNA test results were that that's my mom. But when now you're talking about, well, we found this petrified mummy in frozen in the ice in Siberia, and the scientists, they tested it, and it says that we have a genetic link to this animal, and it's one of our earlier ancestors. Like, this is just like, that's where I get lost. That's where I'm
it's
like,
the same science though, Josh, that tells you that your grandmother is your grandmother is the exact same science that tells us our relationship to other animals. And so we can take two existing species of animals and we can figure out what the molecular clock is, the mutation rate of the biomolecules, and we can deduce that time when those two species diverge. So it's really, I want to say hi to Mark Ness, by the way.
Oh, how are you, Big Bad Mama?
Good. It's good to see you. I don't think we've
too.
been on the stream together, but I really enjoy your comments and stuff. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And I know it's going a little back, but Hudson earlier mentioned that apparently dinosaurs were the first creatures. Well, that's not the case. There were creatures before the dinosaurs.
If it sounded like I believe that, I don't believe that. I think definitely I went to school, man. I learned evolution. That's what I learned, and I also learned Christianity. And so it's not like I'm completely ignorant to the other, but like there's people obviously who specialize, like you're saying, like people who figured out some way to test DNA, and they got fancy computer programs or algorithms. It's really hard for me to imagine like the very micro and the very macro. I'm kind of more like in a threshold of reality. I would say, like, my acceptable reality is things that have happened within the past couple thousand years. That where I am today as a human, I can only really fathom the idea of humanity 2,000 years ago, because 2,000 years ago, um no sorry, like, yeah, 2,000 years ago, we didn't have this science, we didn't have a lot of this. And how far back, like, would you say that it was before humans, like modern day humans, started really kind of gaining this consciousness or this ability to be philosophers and to create computers? And like, at what point did we evolve to that? And I mean, that seems very recent in the grand scheme of like the humans
It's a
that we are. I
buildup of
mean,
knowledge over time. I mean, you're
Oh, yeah.
building knowledge, but it's not like that people that lived 100,000 years ago were any less intelligent than the people that live now. It's just we've built our knowledge base over time. And so, they were inventing tools and weapons and whatever they had to use to survive that were ingenious, for their time.
Yeah, and there's a concept that sort of gets talked about, which I know this is sort of a technical word, but it's socio-technical communication. And what that means is the ability to teach each other how to do stuff. Like, so you may have a job, you're a mechanic, and I don't know anything about cars. It's that ability to teach somebody else what you know. We see this in chimpanzees at the moment. They're teaching each other how to use stone tools. All of this is really slow development, though. As Big Bad Mama said, it's sort of, 100,000 years ago was probably Homo habilis, the people, the sort of hominid that sort of started using tools, and they would have to communicate that to other humans. So I don't think there's one, you're sort of thinking of black and white. Well, we hit this spot where suddenly we have the ability to do computers, but that's not the case. In reality, our technical skills, our ability to use tools, has been a real slow and gradual process that's sort of sped up as time goes on and we get more and more knowledge. So there's no reason why the people back then couldn't have used a computer, except that it hadn't been discovered and they were working with the most primitive of tools. Like, don't forget, in order to shape wood, we would have to have stone tools, and then the wood would allow us to construct homes, and that would allow us to do things. So we're really talking about a long line of gradual accomplishments.
Can I just quickly add in a comment to Josh? I wrote something to you in the private chat.
thank you. I saw it. I put a heart back.
And I just wanted to make sure you saw it. Good.
Yeah,
Yes,
I don't want you to feel attacked, Josh. I really don't. Like, I think that I'd rather have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, we're pretty positive people. We're not like the young Earth creationists who just want to browbeat those who don't think like them or feel like like they have to make you feel dumb.
I'll tell you this much. Whatever the Bible like people like Ken and maybe the Proverbs guys, whatever the Bible parts that they claim are literal and they claim to believe, I'm telling you that their faith, Ken Hovind's faith, these people's faith, and it's literally on sandy foundation. These guys are really ready to, like, I feel they need so much supporting evidence to, like, build, like, because Ken Hovind, like, from my understanding, is like he also believes the evidence that he has is legitimate evidence, right? He thinks that the way that these things are found and the different um whatever scientific jargon he claims he's making. So see, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, look, because of the way that the waters and the continents all shifted around, and because of this evidence, this proves the Bible. Like, I think that if you're gonna believe the Bible, you need to believe it at face value. And then if the evidence comes up to support, I think somebody said something the other day about being accidentally correct. Well, even in the I have to agree that over time humans had to build tools, and they learned how to mine for ore, and eventually they went from wood tools to stone tools to metal tools, right? There's a progressive, like, um way in which humanity has evolved into where we're at. I mean, we've gotten so good at making tools that we have the technology which we have now. So I would argue that it seems like in the evolution model, humans remained in the hunter-gatherer state for quite a bit of time compared to how quickly, like, we've progressed in the last 10,000 years. Would you
Well,
agree?
that is true, but that partially has to do with the accumulation of knowledge. So if you imagine your, I don't know, let's say a child. If we make the entire human race, and by that I mean Homo sapien in this case, and condense it into a single child. When the child is born, they're gonna have um, no real concepts or understandings about anything. They can't talk. They can basically not see much further than like 30 centimeters a foot or something like that. But as they grow, we grow, we accumulate experience. And if you extrapolate that and uh, if you extrapolate that out to an entire species, you're going to have a completely different dynamic. So, for instance, the hand axe, the flintstone hand axe, was in use. It was the only tool that humans used for almost 100,000 years.
That's what you want me to believe. Yes, I understand.
Yes. That's what the archaeology shows us. And
Yeah, that's the evidence shows that.
Yeah,
not
that's
what
what
we
the
want you to
evidence-
believe.
No, but again, so this is where we kind of hit the fork in the road.
Yeah.
I am willing to accept some evidence, but other evidence I have to be highly critical of. Like, I mean, I don't know the intricacies of some of this technology that's being used to test the amount of carbon-14 and how it's deteriorated over time. Like, I'm not going to try to sit here and, like, oh, I understand that. I kind of have to take the scientists, the experts word for it. So
of course,
so I have to take the word for it that they measured the Dead Sea Scrolls and they perfectly time back to 300 AD or whatever.
And
Go ahead.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Not every single one of us can be, I mean, none of us, not one single person can be an expert on every single topic. So, of course, there are things that we kind of have to trust in the scientific model, but we can also reason ourselves to, for instance, I'm an archaeologist. I know like the absolute most basic elements of C14 dating. I know it as in principle, but I have no deeper understanding of it because that's not what archaeology really is. We use it as a method, which is why I know something about it. But
So hold on, Deviant. So I have to circle back to my first comment about like common sense. So if I put my scientist hat on, okay, and I'm like, all right, let's figure this out. We found this ice wall here, and we're gonna dig a big hole, and we're gonna pull out one of these ice cores. Was that you, Mark, who was talking about ice cores or something?
Yeah, ice core samples from the Antarctic. Yeah.
Okay, so in my observations, right, what I'm able to see is that sometimes it snows and the snow builds up, and then if it remains cold enough, the snow eventually compresses into ice. Or I'm just thinking out loud, right? So again, I don't know all the. If you ask me, here's this core sample, figure out how old it is, right? Before we even get to like the super technical carbon 14 things, we got to establish a couple of ground rules. Like when we look at a glacier, I think it's fair to say how many times has it melted and built up again, and melted and built up again.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, for one thing, we're not collecting ice cores on glaciers, though. We're collecting them on stable ice caps.
Yeah, but
No,
the
that's
stable ice cap.
no, that's not true. So there's active glaciers and there's stable glaciers, and we're doing them on
right,
stable.
right. But he's talking about an active glacier.
Active glacier, yeah, one that melts completely.
Well, I don't necessarily know where the ice cores are coming from. Let's use that stable ice cap model, right? Again, Mark, and just kind of run through this thought experiment with me. If there was a super volcano, right, that we know they exist, and we know they've exploded here from time to time. The idea is that this super volcano, if it explodes, is capable to put up enough soot into the sky that would block out the sun, and things would freeze, right? So is that within the realm of possibilities?
Yeah, because the ice core samples have frozen bubbles of the atmosphere in it. So when the volcano explodes, it sends out a whole bunch of chemicals like sulfur and things like that. And we can actually track back to find out when that occurred. We can actually see when the industrial age was in the bands of soot in these ice core samples. We can actually tell when we started putting smoke into the sky, basically. We can also find through the way that it melts, we can see the cycles of the progression of the sun towards and away from us, kind of thing, because there's slight variation year per year. And that adds up perfectly with what we know in physics and what we know in geology and what we know about our own history. So that they really tell us a lot, that we're actually tracking them accurately, as well as being able to see from the annual melt and refreeze new layers form, right? So it's not like we're looking at the layers and going, oh, well, they formed back then, but we've got no way to verify that's happened. We see them forming now.
So go ahead, Divya.
Yeah, because I feel like this is all tying into what the point of what I was going to say is, which is Oh no, Claude, which is that even though I don't know the exact science behind it, I couldn't perform a C14 dating, for instance. But I do understand the scientific method that's being used, and I do know that I am prepared for the fact that there can be slight variations and mistakes can happen and so forth. But I also know that we don't rely on one single piece of evidence. There is always multiple evidence from different fields.
I'm not against any of that. So I mean,
No.
I
And so
understand that. Like if I cut a tree, and I look at the rings and I date it back because of the seasons, I use some kind of dating mechanism, and then I look at an ice core, and then I kind of look at the layers and track it all back and cross-reference with the trees, and then we find that there was the soot or sulfur or whatever pollution was being put out. I understand how this works on a small scale.
yeah.
On a small scale, like how old is the oldest tree that is alive today? Does anyone know?
What, 10,000 years or something like that?
Yeah, I think 10,000.
And much older than most young Earth creationists think the Earth is.
But the ice core data, I have to say, goes back hundreds of thousands of years, doesn't it?
800,000.
800,000 years, yeah.
And
but
much older than how much
argument is that that same very polar ice cap that is a stable ice cap that we claim has been frozen for 800,000 years or 800 million. Is it 1,000?
800,000.
Yeah, 800,000.
I think that there's these catastrophic events that cause the caps to like build. I think a good argument can be made, and especially looking at the tree ring circles, that some seasons were longer, some had more sunlight, some had less sunlight.
Yeah, I think Josh, you are looking with respect. You're looking for every excuse to be able to justify your Bible views, and every time science is put up, you have a contrary of your opinion, not genuinely inquiring. But I think if you genuinely do, you should enroll in some courses. I don't know where you live, but there will be science courses, and you can genuinely learn about science from real science people and not depend on creationists or Creation Today or Ken Ham or any of those people. There are real scientists out there that you can learn from, because I sense also a willingness to learn, but at the same time defending the position of the Bible.
So
am I right or wrong?
You're wrong.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I mean, to sit here and to try to claim that, like, oh, well, you don't know, he almost made it seem as if I'm too feeble-minded, that I need to go take a science class for me to understand.
No, I think it's a sensible thing for all of us to do if we're not scientists.
I get what's going on. I mean, to say that, you know, you're measuring the technology exists to measure the molecules, and you cross-reference it with other things and other places, and this is how we get the dates. But like I said, even if we look at the oldest tree, which is 10,000 years old, I mean, that's closer.
It's on screen.
That's a closer reference point than 100 million years. Oh, that's the tree?
Yep. It's here in Sweden. It's called Old Chico.
Oh, can you climb it?
You shouldn't, because it's
a grandpa.
It's very old.
Would you climb your grandfather? No.
But I do have to, we're going to have to resume this again another day on one of the other shows.
I just wanted to show it to you, since
it has been very interesting, and to hear these different points of view, and at least we can do it civilly, which is very good. And
thanks, Claude. Mark, Big Bad Mama, talk to y'all next time.
Well, I will.
Good to see you, Josh. Good to talk to you.
See you next time.
Always good to talk to you.
Mama, I'll talk to you afterwards if that's all right. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye and good night. Thank you to everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Good to see you, Mark
Oh,
Ness.
You
And
too,
Mark
Big
Reed.
Bad Mama.